You're listening to The Disc Golf Show.
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to The Disc Golf Show. As you can see already, we're missing somebody. Justin is at one of his flat earth conventions. Birds aren't real. One of those things. So when he gets back, we can talk more about that. This is episode 7. Today is April 8th of 2025. This show, podcast, the whole deal, is brought to you in part by Final Nine Sports. They have 2 locations. It's local pro shop, one in Orangevale and one in Rockland, California. As always, go shop local if you can. Support your local pro shops because that's what you should do. Now, in the situation that they do not carry what you are looking for, please go check out another one of our sponsors for the podcast, Disc Golf Deals USA. If you go to our affiliate link, which is discgolfdealsusa.com/discgolfshow, you can get 10% off your orders, and they are always up to date on all the new goodies coming out. We will get to that stuff later in one of our other segments, but let's jump into the news. This one is lacking the little blurbs that are in between the noises, so you're going to just have to listen to me say we're jumping into the news. So let's go for it, Ken.
Actually, first we skipped our intro, and even though it says Justin down there in the corner, that's Nick.
Oh, I did.
I'm Ken.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So don't believe the little Justin in the corner. It's Nick, yeah, exactly. And I'm Ken. Yeah. And, don't forget to click, subscribe, do all the things, share it out. We're trying to grow the channel, all that good stuff. So in the news, first thing, Prodigy becomes the main sponsor or the sponsor of the GoThrow Pro Tour. I know they announced that when Luke did his live, and they've put it on their socials and everything. A connection there, obviously, between Luke being, a Prodigy sponsored player and Will Shoestrick, in Prodigy, and those two are thick as thieves and everything. So, but hey, more power to them. I'm glad they found a sponsor. I hope that doesn't change too much. I like that they were able to, mention all the discs and things like that. And I know Luke during skins matches back in the day, at least, he would even pull discs out of pros bags and be like, hey, what's your oldest disc, or what disc was that? And he'd mention, like I got hanging on the wall, some of the, tour series discs and things like that people have. Support your local pros, not your local pros, support your pros, buy a disc, buy a hat, buy some merch from them, things like that. But definitely, go see a GoThrow event. They're a nice little in-between thing, from the Pro Tour, and give you some different stuff.
Yeah, they're
to check out.
With being their first year, it's not a total shock, like you said, that Prodigy is the main sponsor now of the tour because of the connection with Luke and Will and all that. I think that they're going to be learning a lot this year in how to run the tour. I know Luke has mentioned that he likes to have his hands in a lot of different things just in case he wants to do something new, something different to keep things fresh. But I do like the coverage is fine. I'd say we've touched on this before. Their website, they'll learn it needs some work. But it's informative. It's just not maybe laid out in the best way. But I do hope that, one, with all the experience Luke has had playing on the tour, that he'll be able to take those ideas that he has of things that could get better or different in a way that could benefit the players and the viewers, and maybe even influence the Disc Golf Pro Tour, because ultimately, if he gets onto something that people are gravitate towards, then that could always, in the end, make the Pro Tour, the Disc Golf Pro Tour, better. So ultimately,
absolutely,
goal here is hopefully each of them make each other better, and we all get more disc golf out of it anyway. So that's always a plus.
For sure.
We do have a couple announcements, late announcements, kind of, for sponsor, or in this case, lack of sponsor. So there were a couple players that went open bag recently. One was Haley King announced she was open bag, and Natalie announced that she was leaving Neptune Discs for open bag. I believe that with the off season, she had some surgery. So that was one reason why Natalie wasn't in earlier events that I know of. But those are two players that are now throwing open bag, and there, I think there's a massive argument for that. It's tough because yes, having a manufacturer sponsor is great, mainly if you're at the top of the game.
Right.
It's not, and it's still good. Don't get me wrong, because if you're a lower top pro, then you still have access to those tools, but it's not catered as much.
Right.
But with an open bag, being able to throw any disc, it doesn't matter. You can fill a gap. So there's no gap
Correct.
when you have
Yep.
an open bag. You know what I mean? But we'll
I
see
think
if
eventually that's where most pros will go, is an open bag. Throw what you want, throw what makes sense to you and
well,
your arm speed, your hand. We've talked about that before.
it is
So,
tough. It is tough because when you look at, again, our most relatable sport, golf, you do have
mhm.
the players that are sponsored by a specific manufacturer, right?
Yep.
Callaway, or used to be Nike. Nike isn't anymore, but
Right.
um,
Titleist,
yeah,
things
title
like that.
exactly. Like, yeah, but yeah, I think for the player benefit, open bag is super advantageous. But I think you still want that. The manufacturers want those players to only be throwing theirs, because then they'll be like, oh, the people who like that player will get our
Right.
discs because their favorite player throws our discs. But
Right.
yeah,
I,
that's
I I think the pendulum swing will go back that way to golf, to
yeah,
where eventually, yeah, it's going to be all manufacturers and no open bags, because you're also going to get many more options. Because I
yeah,
think what you see a lot with, like, some of the open bag players, they just don't, or some of the, say, the lower tiered manufacturers like a Neptune, they had to be an open bag even though you were sponsored by Neptune, things
yeah,
like that. Even
yeah. Those
Infinite back in the day, if you remember, you could still, it was open bag because they just didn't have enough discs.
yeah,
They're getting to that point. Trash Panda's starting to sponsor some players. He just doesn't have Jesse doesn't have enough discs without
yeah,
it being an open bag. So yeah, I think eventually it'll go back to where, yeah, if you're throwing Discraft, you're throwing Discraft, Innova, but more manufacturers than just those four or five that we have now.
yeah. I think it comes down to also that our sport is still young, and
Absolutely.
it's still finding its natural way of growing, and it's kind of tough when it comes to, you're going to have those. Drew Gibson's been sponsored by Infinite for a while, but he has
Yep.
his brand, and there's been talk or discussion or questions brought up about, would there ever be a situation where a player is sponsored by a manufacturer for their putter or for their
Which he
driver or
was.
for
EV7
exactly,
sponsored just his
exactly.
putter slot.
Yep.
And then I
Yep.
believe he did another one to where it was just one disc that he was throwing, that was also kind of not in
Yeah.
Infinite's.
Yeah. I,
And then
I, I don't
Scott
know.
Stokely is also doing that. He's been giving out his discs and to certain players. I know now Emily is on Innova, but last year she threw like his Cardinal or one of them. Again, memory's
Yeah.
terrible at
Yeah.
55
Yeah.
years old, but I
Yeah.
I know he's done that. Right now, I
Yeah.
think his big one is the Owl or something like that, that he's given to some open
Yep.
bag players and things like that. So yeah, that's going to happen too, where you're going to get, I think, some slots in people's bags that are just individually sponsored.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, Trash Panda, being with Erica Stinscombe, they only have 5 discs. So she's
Hmm.
obviously got a, and she's still with Infinite. I think I don't know if she throws Clash anymore. I don't know if
I don't
she's
know.
sponsored by them at all anymore.
Yeah, I'm not positive
I
on
mean,
that, but
obviously she can with an open bag, I would think. That's the other thing. We don't know what the limitations is. That an Infinite has their own amount of discs. Trash Panda
mhm.
has their own amount of discs. Like who knows
Oh
how
yeah,
that all works out.
yeah. That'll be interesting
Anyway, I think we can.
as the years pass of what direction the players will go. I think open bag for entry level players is probably going to be the way newer up and coming disc golfers
Yep.
get sponsorships, because then again they can kind of figure out and feel out what manufacturers they like most, and maybe go towards and try to see if they can get sponsored by those. But I think entry level, it's definitely good. You get your local pro shop to sponsor you. It's open bag, right? Something like that. But
I would think so,
uh,
yeah.
yeah, we'll see how that progresses throughout the years.
Right. You
We
know what
do
else
have,
is newer though? We
yeah,
have a
right.
newer thing in disc golf, which is new fantasy disc golf company coming into it and betting overall in disc golf. It was announced by Jeff Spring. It was on April Fool's, so everybody thought maybe this is a joke. But there's actually betting now allowed in certain states. I think it's limited to like 6 states, so check your local thing. And again, gamble responsible, people.
Yes, yes.
Just as a quick side note, I wish they would have they already did an ad and they did not say gamble responsible.
I think
They mentioned the being able to gamble, but they didn't mention the gamble responsibility. Again,
Yeah, I think
just
that somebody did. I did see one ad where there was a mention of like this, but yeah, that's definitely something that they need to add to every single time they're
yep.
it's promoting that. Then
Hmm.
yeah, they should definitely include that. Yeah, I think
So the one that we're talking about is what is it? In Hold
it's
My
hold my
Bag.
bag. Yep, yep.
Yep.
So go to holdmybagdg.com. You can actually go there now. And there's a free option to join. And I think it's like first place gets 300, second place gets two, or first place gets 250, 150, and one, or something like that. There's a tiered for third, first, or
Right.
third, second, first.
And
And then
that's
a free entrance. So,
right. And the reason why it's like that, honestly, I think there are some guidelines in even in free like chance gambling that you can't have your limits set too high. You can only offer
yeah,
so much money when it
yeah,
comes to those kind of things. So, and
yeah,
again,
exactly.
check your state law, check your limitations, things like that. You got to pay taxes on that kind of money, even if it's that kind of low. You're supposed to report it, do all the right things when you're gambling, people.
Yeah. And,
But yeah, I
and
mean, it's a great option to have. I'm personally, I'm for it. I don't think it's a bad thing that the Disc Golf Pro Tour got, associated with it. It's more revenue that's coming in. It's just another ad that they have to read as far as I'm concerned. If you
yep,
don't like it, I understand that too. You're allowed to not like that gambling's in it. There supposedly is a site or a overseer to make sure that we don't get point shavings and
yeah,
people getting paid off, and that's why they also kept the limits low on what you can gamble. It's not unlimited. If you're a millionaire, you can't come in to disc golf and bet $100,000 for Kristen to win every week. I think right now the limits are only like $100,
okay. That's still fun.
something like that. Yeah,
Fun.
yeah,
You're not
absolutely.
you're not turning your bank account upside down for that. So,
Correct.
but yeah, I think with again, with anything, you have Skip Ace, which is what we use. The website for holdmybagdg.com is very simple
Yep.
currently, very intuitive, easy to manage. So again, go check it out if you enjoy the fantasy disc golf or fantasy league type of stuff. Go check it out again. Holdmybagdg.com. Let's move on to the biggest. Well, I mean, there was another event. Again, the Go Throw Tour
Hmm.
event, Jonesboro, did happen, but we can kind of lightly touch on that. We had after that event, that is when Kristen Lott actually got her 100th win. Now, I know people posted it as a 100th PDGA win, but
Mhm.
I thought GoPro or Go Throw Tour wasn't PDGA Tour.
I don't Jonesboro was just an A tier. It wasn't a go
Okay.
throw.
Oh, it wasn't.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
then good. Then Kristen Lott got her 100th PDGA victory. So big shout out to her. But moving on to the Disc Golf Pro Tour event, which just happened, was the MVP Music City Open, along with what should have been the match play event right prior to that. Now, the reason why I say that is because the weather issues that were going on over there ended up postponing initially the FPO division, but then ultimately MPO as well. So now that match play event is going to be moved into the future prior to another upcoming Disc Golf Pro Tour event, which I hope we get it soon because I like those match play events. They're fun to watch.
Yeah.
They're very
I
entertaining.
actually was at one at Steel Club. I was
Yeah,
at one of the match play events. It was really cool.
because you run everything in those things, so you don't hold
Mhm.
back on those because it's
Yeah.
a point per hole. You're not losing strokes; you're losing one. So that was cool. Now I don't know if you watched the press conference. I tried to.
Highlights of it. Yeah.
I try to watch it if I have the availability to do so. Um, there was a couple things that I just want to notate on here. One was the banter between Macbeth and Wysocki, very
That was
lighthearted.
fantastic. Yeah.
It was fun
Really
to
good.
watch. It's so interesting now because growing up playing and seeing them when they were head to head, like hardcore, not
Right.
hated each other, but they were trying to beat each other like
Oh, yeah. There
to a
wasn't
pulp.
much fist
Like
bumping back
no,
then, or it was
no,
very
exactly.
steely. They did not talk,
No,
for
no.
years. They did
So
not talk at
it's
all.
interesting seeing the dynamic now between them, especially with them being both on Discraft, Team Discraft. But that was really fun. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Another thing was, oh man, so FPO, the Missy and Rebecca Cox were both, because for this press conference they were interviewing like the people that were, well, they weren't necessarily, not every single duo was head to head, but Missy
Everyone
and
was
Rebecca.
except for Kristen, and
I don't think
Kristen
Wysocki and
was
Macbeth were though,
yeah,
because they
they
were
were
about
they were
possibly meeting
matched.
up, right? Were they matched? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're
All
in
right.
the original match. All the press conference, you're right, was all the match play
Oh, okay.
contestants
Okay.
against each other, except for Kristen didn't have Silva there. Silva was filming the MVP practice
That's right.
round. And if you
That's
haven't
right.
seen that, because Silva
Yeah.
doesn't talk much, well, she doesn't. Oh, spoilers. She doesn't talk much in the MVP practice round with Simon and Eagle, but they do get
Yeah.
a little bit of personality out of her. So I
Yeah.
would say that's something you definitely want to check out outside of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
press conference. But back to the
Um,
press conference, yeah. Go
yeah.
ahead with Missy because she's awesome every press conference when it
So
comes to this.
she was funny. Like, yeah, when she does these press conferences, she really has fun with it, and she likes to like dig at her opponents. But she
Hmm.
did mention, because Rebecca is so nice and such a nice person as in as a whole,
Hmm.
that she wanted to kill her with kindness. And right after her saying that, she takes her outer shirt off, and underneath is I with a big heart and Cox. So it was very interesting because not only
Preface it the spelling of the. It was
COX,
Rebecca
it was
Cox's
Rebecca's last
last name.
name, Rebecca Cox.
Right. It
But
was awesome.
it was fun to see that. I like having that lightheartedness in
Absolutely.
those situations because it's not just all business. Which, again, in a match play, it's not so much all business,
Right.
especially with disc golf, because there's that happens so few times currently. Hopefully, we can see more and more and more of that. Um,
Holland and Ella's press conference was pretty funny. They were definitely taking
yeah,
jabs at each other. And again, if you
yeah,
don't know, they're also best friends. They do practice
yeah,
rounds together. Another
yep,
thing you
yeah,
could check out online with all the creators out there. Ella
yeah,
and Holland flip flop back and forth on their YouTube channels, their practice rounds and things like that. And they definitely
Yeah,
went back and forth with each other.
yeah.
But Missy, I mean, she takes the cake, male,
She's
female. She takes
she's
the cake. Every
she's
press conference when they do these
yeah,
match plays is fantastic.
great. And then we had a mutually declared rivalry, and that was at the
Hmm.
end of the interview between AB and Burr. So they do, I know for a fact, especially in previous interviews, how much they respect each other's games. But I
Yes.
almost feel like they might be the new Macbeth Wysocki.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yes.
So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out through the years as well, because
Yeah, because 'cause they're both still very young, and
they're still
this is gonna
young.
be a decade or
Yep.
more of that head-to-head match. They're both fantastic throwers of the disc. They're changing the game. They're both
Oh yeah.
literally so young and can throw so far with such accuracy that they're just breaking the game, and
Yeah.
so that to see that, inherent, just natural rivalry. It didn't
Well,
have to even be forced. It was
it's their
there, and it's gonna be
yeah,
there.
it's their game that has almost evolved to sports too,
Yeah,
because their
absolutely.
body types, they're very tall,
Mhm.
long wingspan. That's
Yep.
going to be where the average body type is. You're going to
Yeah.
have the outliers of like Emerson Keith, Macbeth, where they're smaller, more compact, but
Yep.
it's almost naturally showing that the taller, longer wingspan players are going to have the advantage, at least distance wise, because everything else is repetition, practice, and all that stuff. But
Sure.
all right, so we get to finally the MVP Music City Open. Reason being is that the match play was postponed because of weather, and the grounds were just muddy like crazy, right? So that in and of itself was a bit of a storyline, because one, a lot of the big thing is safety of the players. You don't want them slipping in the mud and all that. So the staff did massive work on draining and trying to dry up that with that day off, the match play day being no longer. So they took that time to try to do as much as they could
Right, and they
to
canceled you
better.
couldn't practice on the course that day either.
No, no,
Canceled everything.
yeah, because even in one of Simon's videos, he said that he wished he would have had another look at it, but he understands that it was good that match play was canceled, because just playing match play would have muddied that up so much, and just
Yep.
playing another practice rounds for that is basically a day of tour play, because it's practice, but like it's just you're working the ground so much that it's going to be worse for the tours, for the event. But on another note, that was a story. The biggest real, I would say, not the biggest story, because obviously we'll get to the wins and all that stuff. Um, One of the big things that happened, reason being, is because it kind of exploded across not just disc golf
Yeah.
community, was Abby Wilson making a statement, refusing to play, um, because in voicing for protecting the female division. Now, this has been a topic over the past several years, mainly because there's not just one. Okay,
Right.
there's not just one person in FPO that isn't a natural born female. Um, but it's kind of come to the top over the past few years because of Natalie Ryan. So, anyways, that aside, Abby Wilson, went up to the tee, did a practice throw, stopped, turned around, and said, "I'm not going to be playing because wanting to protect the female division for natural born females." Um, a lot of the discussion was that she did this because, well, she's not a well-known pro, and she wasn't going to make any money anyways, because there was a special interest group that was raising some funds to the first
Mhm.
person. And I don't necessarily know if that's the route that should have been taken, is promoting it as, oh, the first person to do this, we'll pay them
Correct.
$1,000. I don't think that you shouldn't be bribing people to do this. It should be of their own
Right.
volition, right?
And they
And
said the more that do it, they're just gonna split the money. One
yeah,
quick thing on Abby, the other thing she did verbalize was for her safety. And if you remember last year at this event, there was a safety issue of
Yep.
someone threatening Natalie Ryan specifically, or the event as a whole. I don't want to get, my
Yeah.
words mixed up. It was one
Yeah.
or the other or both. And so she did mention that she was also leaving due to safety reasons, which there was extra security as far as we know. From what I listened to Grip Lock, they were there
Yeah.
at the event. They did say their credentials were checked. They did say there was bag checks, things like that. But again, go listen to Grip Lock for the details of what they really broke it down, specifically of what she said. They read her statement of what she said. They read the Disc Golf Pro Tour's response to that statement. So Abby's not banned from the Disc Golf Pro Tour. She's able to play. They have no problem with her playing. She has a right to protest like she did.
Yes.
Um, they were disputing, though, again, the safety aspects of it. They said that there was uh, security on the card and also at the event, things like that. And
Yeah.
again, Grip Lock did go through and confirm that they did get checked with their credentials and things like that. Although,
Yep.
there could have been better, it could have been better served. But as we
There
always talk
probably
about,
ways. Yeah.
yeah, the Pro
Yeah.
Tours got very little funds. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that's an excuse for people's safety. I'm just saying you are still limited by your budget.
Yep. Exactly.
You know,
Exactly. But I think that, as you touched on there, I think the thing that people, again, this happens on both sides of the argument, both sides
Mhm.
of whatever side you're on, right? The fact that some people take offense to somebody standing up for what they believe, but still wanting to be able to stand up for what they believe and be respected for it, you can't have it both ways. You have to
Correct.
be able to go, well, I want Natalie to be able to play in FPO. And then you also, if you do believe that, have to be okay with somebody else going, I do not want Natalie or any other, I don't want to point out Natalie, any trans women to play in FPO. You have to allow that. And the way that it was done as being part of her decision not to play, that was a respectful way to do it.
Correct.
Now, you don't like it, by all means, you can disagree with it. You don't have to agree with everything everybody says. It's impossible to do so. But you have to be able to be civil in how you want to argue your point. And it's not fair to say, well, we're fighting our fight, but somebody else can't fight theirs. And then you can't dictate how somebody else fights their fight either, unless you're saying, yes, no harm to somebody. By all means, I think that
Yep.
no physical harm should
And I
come to
would say
anybody.
even not argument, but discussion. Have a
Yes,
discussion about it.
yes,
Nick and I
yes,
had our discussion about it through
yep.
via text and, uh, through,
Well,
before we started the podcast.
prep for
Yeah.
the show. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We just talked about it. We didn't argue with each other, and we do have
Nope.
differing opinions, believe it
Yep.
or not. And here we
Yeah.
sit doing a podcast and we have different opinions.
Exactly. You have to be respectful of somebody else's point of view, whether you agree
Correct.
with it or not. That's what it comes down to. And the thing is that, listen, if you want to voice your opinion and you're trying to change the rules, there are ways to go about that. And this is probably one of the most proper ways to go about it, because what happened? Was there any violence? No.
Nope.
She voiced her opinion, she left, and currently the rules allow trans women to play in FPO. So until those rules are changed, those are the rules.
Yep.
So abide by the rules. Like, you can't just make your own rules up on the fly. You've got to go through the process. And it can be tough. It can be something that is draining. But listen, you got to look at it this way. It's draining for both sides. You're
Correct.
both fighting for your own point of view. And whatever the ultimate outcome is the one that you have to play by. Those are the
Right.
rules.
And it's
So,
not like the Disc Golf Pro Tour did not try to stop
yeah,
this from
yeah,
happening. Again,
yeah,
this isn't new. They did try to impose that Natalie not play. So it's not like the Disc Golf Pro Tour is letting her play. They tried fighting it. They ran out of
Well,
funds.
they didn't have the funds, which was one interesting thing. I did see somebody bring up a point on one of the threads on social media saying they should get Turning Point to back Pro Tour because Turning Point has a lot of money and they could maybe have some backing to be able to fight their point of view. But again, that's something that's not in my hands. You know, you can voice your opinion. People know my opinion, and I'm probably going to do a separate video just on my opinion.
Sure.
Respectfully, because that's how I like to do it. Now, if you take offense, that's on you, because I'm not doing this in any way to offend people. I'm just trying to explain it as best I can from my point of view in a way that hopefully somebody else can understand, even if they don't agree with it. Like that's
I mentioned it before. If you don't like what the PDGA allows, when it comes to voting, vote the board members that you feel are on your side. Exercise your right to vote as a PDGA member. And if you're boycotting the PDGA because of what's going on, well, then you can't vote.
You can't participate.
You can send in emails again, but send in respectful emails. If you're just going to say, I hate you for allowing Natalie to play in FPO or again, any trans athlete to play in any division, that's probably not the best. That's going to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah, name calling doesn't go anywhere. Be respectful in how you address the situation and try to be as civil in your argument as you can. Like it's
correct.
It's the only way you're going to get your voice to be heard by anybody. So let's move on. I'm sure.
Back to the event. Katrina Allen, brand new mom. She gets a top 10 in this event too.
Awesome.
Really having some great showings. You know, veteran of the tour, a grinder of the tour. Again, I've been following her since she came on the scene because I've been, again, if you don't know, I've been playing since 1993. So as soon as there was any kind of video to play and stuff like that, she's one of the first pros I followed because I loved that she was going to the gym and grinding. You know, it was always gym, disc golf, gym, disc golf. Like she was, and still, and it shows.
Disc golf steak.
Yeah. I love the carnivore diet that she follows and stuff like that too.
She is a beast when it comes to dedication, work ethic. Like
absolutely,
she's one of the top. You know, and I don't care whether you have a personal opinion of her or not. Sports wise, athlete wise, competitor wise, she's one of the top competitors. It doesn't, you know, I always believe that as well. I do want to say it was good to see Sarah in the booth again, because as much as I enjoy watching her out on the course, I think she's an amazing commentator, and I'm glad that Sarah Hokum, exactly. I'm glad to see her back in the booth commentating on these rounds. I like hearing her point of view and her outlook. So big shout out to Sarah Hokum.
Yeah, I like Charlie Eisenhood too. I think personally he's a great commentator. And I love seeing Grant Zellner out there on the grounds. Don't get me wrong, I like Nate and I like Brian, but Grant Zellner, he used to work for the PDGA. I don't think he does anymore. I saw Disc Golf Pro Tour, and again, being at this event, being on the grounds, I would assume he's not there. And his podcast, PDGA Radio, he did with Jen Allen, fantastic podcast while it was on. Unfortunately, it's no longer. But yeah, he's really good with his interviews and you know, his course commentator, give you a little different viewpoint than what you normally get from Nate and Brian too. A lot of those two talk about the throws and the courses because they've been on them, they've played them, they've thrown the rounds, things like that. They have a better connection with the players because again, they've played with a lot of these people, you know, and stuff like that. Where Grant gave you a different perspective, but it was still good. I do like what Disc Golf Network has done now with their commentating team, with the fact that they're dressing a little snappier. You know, they're.
I wasn't a big fan of the first run of updated attire, just because and again they're limited to what they have. But personally, it wasn't. Let me just put it this way: I did appreciate the change this this event. I
Okay.
thought Sarah looked a little more, and again, um, uh, nothing against the previous commentators,
Right.
but I think Sarah looked much more presentable, and I like the fact that they're getting uh, more official looking, I guess is a way of
Yeah.
saying it. I do like that. Uh, it just legitimizes the production a little more. Uh, but I hope they continue to uh, fine tune it. Basically, in my opinion,
Yeah.
I hope they do. Now FPO, we had another playoff. So
Yes, we did.
that seems to be the theme of 2025 right now is playoffs, I think, because almost all these events had playoffs. But you can tell me more. I unfortunately was not able to watch it live because I had other
Right.
duties.
Going
But
into the final round, Kristen and Silva pretty much they kind of, separated themselves from everybody else. There were a few times that I know Holland, had a great strong third round and caught back up. Oh, and quickly on the weather, the girls weren't even sure they were going to play. They weren't even sure there was going to be a third round. Same with MPO. Again, there was tornado warnings, lots
yep,
of weather, lots of sloppiness and things like that. But they did end up playing. I think they got delayed a little bit because the MPO had to finish up their round. Or
yeah, I did
anyway,
hear that had to finish the end of their
yeah.
round at the very morning of the third day.
So going even into the final nine, Kristen and Silva were tied or one stroke off. They were neck and neck. But then in the back nine, again watching the coverage, Silva got four strokes then all of a sudden going into hole 17.
Oh
And in
wow!
hole 17, she threw out of bounds, I believe,
Oh
but definitely made a book. And then Kristen parked it. So it was like bogey, birdie that
yeah,
caught it back up. And then on 18, Kristen had a beautiful drive.
I saw
Basically
that.
parked 18. And there
Yeah.
was hardly anybody in the whole FBO field that did that through the entire weekend.
Mm-hmm.
There was another hole that I know and I'm sorry I don't remember it, but Kristen got one of the par fours twice in the weekend, and Two Hot Geese said that only four total birdies were gotten on
Oh,
that hole.
two
Kristen
of them
got
were
two of the four. So that was a big separator hole. I believe it was hole 7 or 8. It was somewhere
mm.
back there. Um, but then again, back to 18. Silva, got down there in like a long circle 2, maybe even circle 3. Could not make the putt on 18. Kristen got the birdie, ended up tying it up. So then they announced it was going to be 17, 18 on repeat, sudden death. Now, again, if you go back to 17, Silva did not birdie it. It's that long up the hill drive. You're driving, I think, from across the creek or something like that, and then it's a
Yep,
throw up a hill.
up the
And
hill to the
up
right.
the hill, there's like 3 or 4 kind of trees and then a really bushy tree area. Again, unfortunately, right away, Silva had an okay drive. Kristen crushed it out of there. Silva threw into that bush, and there was really just no way of getting out for her. Kristen threw a forehand. It was spectacular. Up the hill, probably about 300 foot of power needed, maybe even a little bit more. Forehand it right up there, and it ended in the playoff by. And unfortunately, if you, again, spoilers. Obviously, we're talking about it, and you knew we were going to talk about it.
Yeah,
Got to watch the coverage. Poor
yeah,
Silva broke down, but again, I
yeah.
mean, Kristen went right into mommy mode. Gave her a hug, consoled her, talked to her a little bit. I heard had talked to her after the round also again and things like that. Silva will get it. That's the second time she's had a playoff against Kristen. It was at Green Mountain Championships, I believe, that they also had a playoff and Kristen beat her. Silva's here to stay.
Yep.
She's proven that she can play on US soil
Oh yeah.
because if you think about it last year it was all a big thing was she won 5 events in a row over in Europe. But, the caveat, not everybody was there, including even some of the European competition. Kristen, Evelina, Hannah weren't at a lot of those events. But, I mean, her standstill
Yeah.
game is some of the best MPO or FPO I've seen. So in a
And
muddy situation like this, that's fantastic to have.
oh
It
yeah,
really
and
is.
talking about her wins overseas, it doesn't, to me, yes, that does and can play a part, is obviously the field that you're playing against, but ultimately the confidence builder that can give
Yeah,
you, it doesn't,
absolutely.
when you're playing, it doesn't matter who you're playing against. If you win five in a row, your confidence is
Absolutely.
booming, and that helps you in your mental game so much.
Yeah.
So
It shows
that's,
that you can win, that you do have that
but I
that
did want to
fortitude.
that one of the, I think this is almost more of a reason that I like Kristen as a
Hmm.
representation of disc golf is her how gracious of a winner she is. Like,
Yes.
it's not only about the sport. It's not only about getting victories and winning. It's about the competition and
Yep.
her just doing her best for her and the respectful nature she has with everybody around her. Like,
Yeah.
her interview at the end, again, it just solidifies one of the main reasons why I like her as an athlete and a competitor.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
on the good note is the fact that this is another three-peat for her because she
Yes.
had one earlier. So now she has two three-peats. Paige has two three-peats. Paige Pierce. So
Yep.
now for FPO division, there are four, and it's 2-2 right now. So big shout out to Kristen Lott.
Yeah,
She's
she's
not
got 3
only,
guitars now. That's crazy.
yeah, and not only did she get a three-peat, she now has again pushed the highest rating to 1003.
Yeah, we're recording
So,
on a Tuesday. They just had the ratings
yep,
update, and they showed right before the show, we saw she went up to 103 rating.
that was, yeah, 1003. 1003.
1003. Yeah, sorry.
And this then makes her 101 victories now. Her count is just continuing to rise. I'm serious. I don't see currently, barring, I don't want to say this, barring an injury, which she's already been through, actually.
Yes.
I'm not
Twice.
even worried about saying that.
She had
She's
the
already
elbow
had
thing that she had
injury.
surgery and a rib, but she broke a rib.
Barring something tragic or traumatic, like, I
Right.
do not see a ceiling for her anytime soon. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Her game is just too consistent. It's her foundation is too strong. Like,
Her
she's not the
mental game
farthest. Yeah,
is
her mental game is
above
the
everybody
best.
else.
Yep.
The
Yeah,
best.
exactly. So
And again, I
big
would say I would put her FPO, MPO, her mental game is some of the strongest
yep.
you're going to
Yep.
have out there.
Period. Yeah, across the board, not only in FPO. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
because she didn't get shook. Go
yeah,
ahead. I'm
not
sorry.
at all. Not at all. As for MPO, we move on to MPO. They did finish, like you said, the second round was finished in the morning of the third day, so Sunday. They had to finish, the lead cards finish their rounds, and then they ended up playing their final round. This one ended up, which again we've discussed, Macbeth isn't going anywhere. He's
No.
been lead card almost every event. He's been on the lead card at some point. So whether
Yeah.
it's him shoving it into your face, Ken, or
Yes.
something
I
else,
may have misspoke about his demise and him having home field
yeah,
advantage in the
yeah,
first
I feel
event
like
way
it's
too soon.
definitely, he definitely heard you say that, and it's all about proving Ken wrong, is what
Yeah,
it.
not what he said of that he's
Yeah,
doing it for his son.
yeah, yeah, exactly, right. But yeah,
Definitely
big.
because he wants to shove it
It's
in my face.
it's good to see him up there, and he's, again, his game. It's coming back to form of old school Paul. It's just not fully there. Like, he's
Right.
having really, really good rounds, but he's just not having them lined up for
Correct.
a whole event. But almost, it's almost,
Yeah.
on the verge, on the verge. But yeah, Simon, unfortunately, did not have the event of his ideal what
Right,
he
he
was
did
ideally
not
looking for.
three-peat because he was looking for it.
Now he wanted
If you
that
don't
third
watch his
guitar.
vlogs, he actually even
Yeah.
went to the Gibson factory and
Yep.
was checking
Yeah.
that out and everything. It's,
I think out
you
of
know,
the honestly, though the guitar, and I think the guitar is one of the best trophies out there.
same. Yep.
I out of the three that they have made so far, I would say this is. I think Simon has the two better of the two, or of the three, the two
Yeah,
best. Of
two most traditional ones that you would recognize
yeah,
as a
but I mean,
peer.
don't get me wrong. It's a Gibson guitar, and it's like a $3,200 guitar. It's a great guitar, and it's
Yes.
an amazing trophy. So I
And
think,
again, to see an
um,
outside sponsor, because I believe they put money into it
yeah,
besides
yep.
just a trophy. There
Well,
again
not
there
only
was a
that,
segment done on Disc Golf Pro Tour or somebody posted that there's a guy from Gibson that plays disc golf.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's how this connection was made, with Gibson. So that's
exactly.
fantastic.
And that's what you got to have. You got to have those disc golfers in these companies that go, "Hey, you guys are missing a massive market,
Yeah,
a rising market that you could
correct.
benefit from for these companies." But yeah, um, we had the Finnish cowboy, right?
Yes, British Cowboy.
Right. Again, one of the more smaller, compact players. It's all
Right.
about form with him. It's not
Yeah,
that ideal body type that we were discussing before. He has such good structure and repeatable abilities. I think is what it comes
correct.
down to. His form is solid. Nicholas Antila. I don't know. I always feel weird stressing the words like that and trying to say them
Yeah.
correctly. Nicholas Antila. He ends up getting a back-to-back win, so he now is going to be defending next year for a
Yep.
possible. Well, no. He has back-to-back wins, so
On the
next
Disc Golf
event
Pro Tour.
he
Yep.
could get Turkey in wins, so which would be cool. But I'm a fan of Antela, so it's good to see that if somebody else were, which is another interesting thing. Think about this. That's 3 years, and they're all Europe. Well, honestly, they're all European.
Absolutely.
Simon lives here, yes,
Right.
but he was born he was born overseas. Um,
Hmm.
I think that's now that I think about it now, it's good to see that there's all that competition pushing and coming
Yeah.
overseas, coming over here, and showing that hey, this you don't have it in the bag anymore. You know
Yeah. Well, you and
those
I
those
had talked about
players.
that online 5 years ago. We
Yeah.
were like, the push of European players is going to push the game, and
Yep.
luckily we were right, and it really
Yep.
has. Antala, a couple others, in the MPO division, really pushing the game forward, and
Yeah.
things like that. Obviously
Good.
Kristen and Silva,
Yep.
in the FPO division, just fantastic.
Oh
It's
yeah.
fantastic to see.
Good to see them. One person of note, we had a lefty up there at the top also.
Yes, I
Yeah,
love it. Being a lefty myself.
yeah, Austin Turner, no, tied for second. So big shout out to Austin. He's showing up. So let us know. Are you going to let us know about this new product?
Oh yes. So another cool thing besides the fantasy thing that we talked about, there's another. If you don't like fantasy or you don't have the money for fantasy, we do have another way for you to sit at home and enjoy disc golf. Maybe when it's raining, snowing, colder weather, whatever. From the creators of Disc Golf Valley, they are making another game called Disc Golf Master, and it's going to be on the Steam platform. Uh,
Yep. Yep.
so if you know
Yeah.
Steam, it's a video gaming platform that's out there that you can, and a lot of the test games are on there. Trying to think of the right word for it, but anyway, like
Betas.
your GoFundMe games and all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff, your beta games, things like that. It's going to be on Steam for now, and you can sign up right away to get notifications. So the game isn't made yet, but there's commercials out there. Again, look for it And our buddy Jonathan from Latitude 64, he brought my attention to it because he's trying to actually be an avatar in the game.
That'll
So
be so
again, I
cool.
think he has a link on Latitude 64's stories and post that you can go there. Yeah, it would be so cool that you can literally play Jonathan from Latitude 64
Yeah,
in this game.
I'm a fan of Jonathan. And the other thing too with this, if you do enjoy playing Disc Golf Valley, which is fun on its
Yeah,
own, it's
I
very
have it.
fun.
I have it on my phone.
And with the not only the made up courses, but they have
Hmm.
actual courses on there, like
Yeah.
Maple Hill on there.
Yes.
USDGC is on there, I believe.
Yeah. A couple of European
So
courses are on there.
yeah,
Things like
so it's
that.
very fun, but Disc Golf Master is a much more realistic version.
Yes.
So they're pushing, and so hopefully at some point, I thought there was talk about it possibly, in the future being on console, but I
Yes.
think
Yeah.
now Steam is where, like you said, a lot of games start out on these on Steam or sites like Steam to
Right.
test to see how good it'll do and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely go support that project, Disc Golf Master on Steam. We will have the link in the notes below, so go check that out.
Fun fact: back in Disc Golf Valley days, I actually played and beat Simon in Disc Golf Valley. It was on a
Oh,
Twitch stream and everything. Yeah, played against Simon
you can say
Lazat.
you beat
We
Simon.
weren't sure. Me and
Man.
the host, Valerie. She was like, that guy that says Simon Lazat and it looks like a German flag. And then she reached out some people that knew some people, and actually found out that yeah, he had joined her Twitch stream, and we
That's
all
cool.
played Disc Golf Valley
He
against
loves.
him, and I ended up winning. He loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah, he has some.
he's a big fan of Disc Golf Valley. It is fun. They have tournaments on there and stuff, and you can win stuff. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Before we move on to the next segment, I do want to say, do us a favor, please, and click that subscribe button. You can always unsubscribe later if you don't like it, which teach their own. It's perfectly fine and understandable. I won't hate you if you do it. But yeah, any subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. All that stuff helps. But let's move on to disc golf conversations. These are basically topics or questions that we raise to each other to get some discussion going. One thing, and I don't know if okay, you added something on here, but I'll give you this one. My question was, is a TD responsible for damage to electronic devices if no paper scorecards are provided? Reason being, if you look at the PDGA competition manual, if you look at 1.05.h, you can read a little bit about the decisions of the TD in which ways are acceptable for keeping score. Now,
Right.
if it's rainy out, if there's puddles out, or if it's muddy, like the recent event, if you don't provide a paper scorecard and you're forcing the person only to use their phone and they damage their
Hmm.
phone during the event, do you think the TD is responsible for that? Because they're putting the event on and they're responsible for making the grounds uh, viable for an event. So they're making it to where
Correct.
people can play safely on it. Do you think that that's something that might be an issue in the future where they're going to be looked at as saying, hey, you didn't provide us with a paper scorecard. So therefore, I was relegated to playing or keeping score on my phone when I could have just used the card and kept it dry
Right.
underneath my umbrella.
I would say short answer, no, they're not responsible for your phone. I think it would fall under the whole waiver that you sign, like you said, about safety and things like that. You have an inherent unfortunate damage. Say you damage your cart or your bag got soaking wet on the bottom and fell through or whatever. I don't think they're responsible for your bag or your equipment in any way on the course. Same with your phone. I think you got to be responsible enough to either keep it in a plastic bag, keep it under cover when you're bringing it out. Now, is it wrong for them not to have an alternative? Absolutely, it is absolutely wrong. They should have a paper scorecard available for you then, or even one of the laminate ones that you get. I was looking over there because I believe mine that I got sent to me originally from the PDGA is sitting right over there on my
Yep.
desk. There was, laminated that you can dry erase and all that. There's other alternatives. So, short answer is nope, not responsible for your phone. And I played
But
in,
they are
in a
responsible.
sanctioned event. I don't I don't think so. They're responsible maybe to put it in the notes and
Well,
say,
no, I mean,
"Hey, we're looking
but
for
they're
inclement
responsible to
weather."
provide the paper copy. They should
They
be
are,
having.
yes. And
Yes.
that's no matter what weather. That's
Yep.
also, I think, in the rules. They still have to provide it. You don't necessarily use it anymore, but it's still on that fringe of where it should be there. And again, I played in a sanctioned event where it was a downpour all day. We did have a guy that completely lost his phone, and we had to make some adjustments, and we didn't have paper scorecards because
Oh man.
they weren't there. We literally had this scenario, and I know you didn't know this, and it just so happened that the three others of us that were all keeping score kept his score, and at the end, when he was able to wake up his phone or whatever, we were able to put in his scorecard, put it in his scorecard and things like that. But yeah, there was never any paper scorecards, and it was torrential downpour all day, and like I said, one guy did lose his phone. Now again, I don't know the guy. I don't know if he ever got it back, but
Yeah.
I just don't think that any TD should be responsible for it. But there are steps that they should be responsible for and get docked. When
Yeah.
you put it in your TD notes at the end of the thing, you can review your TD. You definitely put it in there. No
Oh
paper
yeah.
scorecards or alternative scorecards were provided in a torrential downpour where we could not use our electronic devices. But there's
Yep.
plenty of bags that are out there nowadays too that you can get. I bought them when I was going on vacation in San Diego because I knew I was going in a kayak, and it just so
Yep.
happened phone, dumped in the ocean, and luckily it was
Yeah.
protected.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
All
good
right.
thing to
Well,
bring
I
up.
mean, I agree. I agree. I think that there will be people that probably push that just because of
Yeah.
depending on how vague it may read, and because
Yep.
people's interpretations can, people are looking for an easy way out or easy money or whatnot.
Hmm.
I hope that isn't the case, but yeah, I agree. I think people have to own up to their own responsibility and being
Yeah.
in charge of their own items, that they shouldn't always have to lean on, oh well, it's not my fault. Like,
Right.
come on, right? So I,
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. Um,
Yeah.
this one,
And
okay.
just a quick touch on it
Yeah,
again. I know we mentioned it earlier, but I don't think you expressed your opinion on it. What do you think of betting being allowed in disc golf now? What do
I
you
think
think?
ultimately, I think ultimately, it comes down to what we talked about. As long as they're prefacing it with bet responsibly, I think
Yes.
as long as they're doing that little disclaimer, it will only help money wise for the tour. Um, I don't think that it's the only negativity is the person by person situation of if
Sure.
somebody's addicted to gambling. That's really the only negative behind it. It for the people who can control their urges when it comes to betting. I think it's just more fun. I was never a big fantasy disc golfer, or fantasy
Until we started. Yeah.
anything. I never played any fantasy leagues or anything like that. I could see the excitement behind it, but I never did it. And then once we
Right.
started doing it last year, it was fun. Just the picking stage, just the choosing your team
Drafting.
stage was
Yeah.
enjoyable. It was fun.
Yep.
So having done it now, last year and this year, it's just a fun alternative, another way to make it enjoyable in a different way.
Sure.
I think that you know, like I said, I think the fact that it can bring money into the sport is the biggest advantage for it.
Okay,
And
now as that money comes in, are you afraid of pros getting paid off on the side, pros betting on themselves, betting on the game,
You can't police everything. You can only do what you can to try to limit that, right? And there's always going to be the people that try to take advantage in whatever way that they can sneak around and do so. Like, if they want to throw a game or if they want to throw something to make a little money, like, I can't stop them. Now, there are things in place in which that you can kind of take care of that. That's all you can do. I'm not scared of that because ultimately I'm not there to worry about those people doing those things. It's just like in basketball. Sometimes you'll see, or football. Sometimes I've seen people commentate on how, they could have gone for the 2-point there, but they didn't because then the spread was exactly what it could have been. I get that.
Yeah.
You can't stop that.
No. And there was a referee that just suspended in basketball within the last couple of years for sports gambling, for calling fouls. There was a player within the last 5 years in the NBA that also got caught point shaving and things like that. So, like you said, you just got to police it like anything else.
As best you can. And I don't think that if you're a player, I don't think if you're competing, you should be able to to bet.
Yeah, the old going way back to Pete Rose. You should not be able to bet on your own sport that you're playing in.
Yeah, because you have a direct effect on the outcome. So it should be allowed. But yeah, I think overall, percentage-wise, it's good for disc golf, and I hope that good only comes from it. Though I do know that with anything, there's always going to be something negative that comes out of
it.
There's
an inherent risk.
Expect,
Yeah.
So we'll
see. You're betting on the Disc Golf Pro Tour and you're out playing your round and your phone gets drenched with water while you're out there checking out your lines and
exactly.
and you lose your phone.
Yeah. All right. We'll skip on to the next segment, and that is gear, zip, and equipment, right? Gear and equipment. We kind of just give you updates on the new equipment that has come out since our last show. So within the last 2 weeks, these are the things that were of note. We did have, and this segment, just to let you know, this segment is sponsored by discgolfdealsusa.com. Or Disc Golf Deals USA. You can check them out, discgolfdealsusa.com/disc golf show for 10% off of your order. And so as of today, the approved discs from March 31st, there were only 4. So overall, in this last couple weeks, there's only 9 discs that were approved, no targets, so no baskets. But as for the ones from March 31st, you had the Tefat, which is the M4.0. So this is a Swedish-made disc. Tefat is the manufacturer or the company, the brand. M4.0 is the disc name. It's their 4th PDGA-approved disc since their first one back on May 22nd of 2023. So it's a small business, small brand. Outside of Tefat, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, you have Native Discs. They came out with 3 approved discs. One is Eco Reboot Trickster. That looks like a putter. The flight numbers are 2501. You have the Eco Char Tornado. That's a driver. And flight number is 9631. And you have the Eco Char Thunder. And that looks like a mid-range. The flight numbers on that are 54-11. And those are all, again, the brand is Native Discs, the manufacturer. As for just yesterday, the ones that were approved over the last week were a manufacturer called Eurodisc. They released the Strategy, or they approved the Strategy and the Beyond. There are 3 other discs that were recently approved. One is the Discmania DD2. Now, we know the DD2's been around a while, but this is the 2025 version. Right. So the slight changes that get
the non-Innova Discmania one.
Yeah, exactly. So the DD2 for Discmania was approved. You have the Discraft. Now, this is interesting because I've never seen them name something like this. The Discraft, or how it was submitted, I should say, is the RW-0325-P. And what that stands for is Ricky Wysocki's proto putter. So his prototype putter was approved. Now the 325, I'm not sure what that is. Maybe that's March of 25.
Right, maybe when it was submitted for approval.
Yeah, so Ricky Wysocki, like March of 25 putter. So that one, be on the lookout for that when it comes out for purchase. And then the fourth disc now from Climo Disc Golf.
Right.
So this is, I believe it's a driver. Might be a fairway.
Yeah, it's a driver.
It's a driver. It's called the Osprey.
I watched the video and it's already gone.
Yeah. So now 4 discs. They have the original 3 that were released, and now this 4th Osprey. So you can go check that out. I know there's some videos up of it. Dana, I believe, has a video of him.
Yeah, Ken talked about it on his
exactly
YouTube channel.
And then as for what you can currently purchase or getting close to purchase, there's a few things. So Thought Space Athletics have a couple discs that are almost available for you to purchase. One is actually going to be available tomorrow, and that is the Persona from Thought Space Athletics. And then on the 16th, so next week, there are a couple discs, or actually several. One is the Thought Space Athletics Votum. That is coming up for release on April 16th. And then in addition to that, you have all the MVP Champions Cup discs that were announced. Those are going to be available if you haven't already pre-ordered them. Those are going to be available on April 16th as well. And all those, guess what? Where can you get them? You can get them at discgolfdealsusa.com/disc golf show. Go check those out when they're released. Again, the Persona is available tomorrow. And then the Votum and all the Champion Cup MVP discs are available on the 16th. So make note and pick those up if those are some of the discs that you want to get.
On a quick side note on those MVP discs, they also did back to Music City Open. They did a collab, and they even put one on an amp. They released the amp and all that. Yeah, with the Gibson guitar and the Music City Open. They look fantastic. Their stamps look amazing. Great collab. If you like seeing Gibson guitar in disc golf or outside, sponsorship, we always talk about it. Support those that support disc golf.
Yeah.
So sure, maybe you're not a guitar player, or bass player, or you don't need an amp. That's fine. Buying those discs, I'm sure will do something, or at least give the marketing ability then for MVP to go back to Gibson and say, hey, by the way, we sold X amount of discs with your name on it. So please come back and sponsor us again. Give us more money, things like that.
Exactly. And then last, as always, you can check out our affiliate link for Vessi Shoes. That will be in the notes down below when I add those in, we upload this. So go check those out. Vessi Shoes, the ones that I have are the high tops. I think it's a Stormbreaker or something like that. They have a bunch of new colors out. Well, not a bunch, but they have new options out color-wise. And I got mine. They were, I think, the gray ones when I got mine. Justin just picked up a pair. He really likes his. Nice. But yeah, go check out Vessi Shoes. Again, if you, I know a lot of people still use Adidas Terex. There is Ideo Sports. They still have great shoes. Disc Golf Company. But yeah, go try out all these companies. You might be surprised as to how much you like that. To me, honestly, between Vessi and Ideo, they're both lightweight and they're very comfortable to wear. So
I have a pair of the Adidas Terex, and I got to say the main negative of them is they're heavy.
They're so weight, huge. Yeah. Hiking shoes, man. Hiking shoes, they work, but they can be chunky. All right. Let's move on to Ken's segment. Ken's fantasy segment. I am not going to repeat the audio for that because I have no clue how that goes off the top of my head. So Ken,
sure.
What do we got? What do we got in fantasy?
Right. Well, again, real quick, just please check out my website, It'll be in the show notes. I got this up there. I also offer lessons and coaching and things like that. 30 years of experience, literally taught hundreds and hundreds of people. There's even some reviews on there on my lessons and things like that if you're, unsure of my abilities as a coach. But
Yeah,
what I'm also pretty good at.
Can you putt? You can say it. Let them know.
Yeah. Can you putt dot wixsite.com/can you putt. Yeah. So as far as fantasy, which I'm also pretty good at, not this week. Unfortunately, I finished third. I did come back up though. I was struggling there for a little bit. But then Casey White, shout out to Casey White. Thank you so much. He hammered it. We didn't mention it MPO. We should have given him a shout out then. We were talking about the Music City Open course record for him this week. So that brought me right back up into.
What was it, 13 under?
12 or 13 under for the second round. In the second round. So pushed him up there. He was able to come up there. Calvin made a big surge, so I got both of them on my team. But my roommate, Tom Koski, he got his first win in fantasy.
Jeez.
Shout out to him. He has Kristen Tatar. So that certainly helped. And he also has Austin Turner. So I think they were the two that really, pushed him up and over the edge. And then Casey Smith, another newcomer to fantasy. He had Antala, so that really pushed it, right? Did he have Antala? He had somebody. He had a really solid team. And again, that's what it is with fantasy. It's not just your Gannon Burrs, your Kristen Tatars, your Antalas, your Calvin Heimbergs that do it for you. It's that depth. Yep. I had put Macy Velodiaz as my second female, where I have Paige Pierce. I put her on my bench. She just hasn't traditionally done well in this, except for, years ago when the field wasn't that good. She was able to outblast everybody when they were just shooting from the MPO field. But I know Macy's from this area, traditionally does well since it's changed to the Music City Open, of this current course, things like that. I know it did burn some people though, because again, another thing we could have mentioned when we're talking about MPO, the Music City Open, is Chris Dickerson finally ended his streak of top 10 finishes.
Oh yeah,
in Tennessee. Yeah. He finished like 19th or 20th or something like that. Yeah. But again, in fantasy, if you would have asked me before this event who you wanted to put in those last few slots in your rosters, Chris Dickerson's one that I would have thrown out there. They wouldn't necessarily start all the time, but for sure at this event, I would have started him. I would have been wrong.
Yeah.
But that's fantasy disc golf.
Yeah, he had, what was it? He had 99%. He had 101 out of 102 top 10 finishes in Tennessee, right?
Yeah, some outrageous number like that.
That's consistency, man. That's consistency.
Yeah, that's consistency. So what we did for this segment, since there's no real way that we could figure out how to do fantasy power rankings, we're just going to quick give you the world rankings and Statmando's official rankings of what they say is the world rankings for FPO and MPO. So FPO for the PDGA world rankings as of recording today, or as of 3/26, sorry. FPO, of course, Kristen Lott, Evelina Sullivan, Holland Handley, Owen Scoggins, and then Missy Gannon. Over on the MPO side of things, again, PDGA world rankings, we got Gannon Burr, Ricky Wysocki, Calvin Heimberg, and then Isaac Robinson on this one you have, and then Nicholas Antala. Now, Statmando's going to be a little different. That's why we brought this up. His most recent rankings, he didn't quite have a date. I think it's a 24-month aggregate that he does through all the events. His FPO is basically the same. He has Kristen Lott first, Holland Handley second, Missy Gannon third, Owen Scoggins fourth, and then Evelina. So what is it? Same names, just in a little different order.
Little switch there, yeah.
And in MPO, again, a little bit of different rankings here. We've got Gannon Burr, Ricky Wysocki, Nicholas Antala, Anthony Barella, and then Ezra Robinson, the other Robinson brother, is in his rankings. So how it relates in fantasy disc golf, not too much of those players in particular. They're going to be the ones that you always want to start pretty much no matter what. Now, what we will say, though, is I just told Nick before the show, I saw a post from the lots that they're back in Estonia. So make sure you check in a couple of weeks for the KC Wide Open and make sure that they're back for it before you put either one of them. Probably Kristen, probably not Silver. But hey, you never know. What happens nowadays is the field does tend to spread out again. Not a lot of people play the KC Wide Open with this little bit of break. Some of the touring pros go home, things like that. Or, as we found out from, again, if you're not watching Simon's vlogs, he's not going to be at KC Wide Open. He was scheduled there, but he's going to have to drop due to some dental surgery that he has scheduled. So he's not going to be back until Champions Cup in California. So check your rosters. Again, look at those players like an Austin Turner if he wasn't picked up or drafted in your league. Look at those deeper, players that are in the field and see if you can, Nathan Queen had a couple of good events, things like that. You're going to have to look for people like that in your fantasy rosters now to make sure that you're filling out your rosters and make sure that you're changing your players out for the ones that you need in there. Trying to think of a couple other names that you might want to look at.
I mean, listen, Macbeth isn't even on here on anybody's rankings list, and he's been at the top. It's like those are
somehow he's still
somehow
if he's still available in your leagues, absolutely take a flyer on him. Why not?
Yeah.
He's been fantastic. Well, again, Casey White. Maybe Casey wasn't drafted. Absolutely see if you can pick him up. Or in Skip Ace, we're allowed trades. Maybe you want to start looking at trades. You got 2 weeks, basically, a week or so. Look over your roster, see what you've been missing these last 3-4 weeks of fantasy, and say, man, my bottom end of my MPO is really bad. I've got, maybe you drafted first and the field wasn't that deep, but there's somebody that you've been eyeing up, that you're like, okay, maybe I need,
I'm kind of hurt with Simon playing because he's always on my roster. He's
right
because I have him this year, but
Kyle Klein missed MCO. So
it also gives me the ability to see, like, I think I swapped him out for Ulibarri because their actual player rating is the same. I mean, I could put Kale in, but he's only a 1 point higher. And, I feel like for some reason, I just feel like Ulibarri's got something coming. I know he's not, and it depends, obviously, it really depends on the course that he's playing because, he doesn't have as much distance as a lot of guys, but he does have 500 plus, he can throw far still.
And a reminder in our Skip Ace Fantasy, it's not always where they finish. You'll get some bonus points if they finish higher. It's more about consistency and not bogeying. It's more about those birdies. So if you can find, again, you look in your rosters, look on your free agents, look at your trades, maybe just find somebody that's just consistent. Sure, they may not be cracking the top 10, but if they're in that 19 to 10, all the way down in even they're only placing like 30th place. If they're not bogeying a lot, they might be worth a flyer if you're missing again, a Simon Lazard, or you're missing, a player.
Or like Aderhold's a powerhouse still.
Sure.
Like he just needs to line. There's a lot of good players still in those, like you said, the top 30, even up into the 40s or into 40. Like there's still a lot of good names out there that have the ability to shoot really well and streak. But it's just them actually doing it, But again, like you said, consistency is key. Consistency player, it doesn't matter if they're, as long as they're not going from 3rd to 60th, if they're hitting 25 or 30 consistently, that's assured points right there, and they're playing consistent enough to help you out with your fantasy. But as for the events coming up that you can look forward to for your fantasy picks, we're always going to continue to mention these ones. May 17th to 25th. Coming up next month is the 2025 Women's Disc Golf Week. And then later in the year, we do like to give a shout out to our friends up north. The September 12th to 14th is the Canadian Championship. It is a DGPTQ series, and that's held in Port Hope, Ontario. And then the bigger events. We have a Go Throw Tour event coming up this weekend, April 12th and 13th. We have Eagles Crossing, the Masters Invitational 2025 in Hawk Point, Missouri. That is at that amazing course that gentleman built just for disc golfers, and it is like a destination course for disc golfers, like paradise, basically. It's if you haven't seen any of the reviews or practice rounds that players have played, Simon's played there, Heinberg's played there. They've played a couple like events.
They've played other Go Throw events when it was
but
GK Throw.
Go check that out. April 12th to 13th, Go Throw Tour, Eagles Crossing, the Masters Invitational 2025. And then the next Disc Golf Pro Tour event that's coming up is, as Ken stated, the 43rd Kansas City Wide Open. That is the Grip EQ 43rd Kansas City Wide Open in Liberty, Missouri. So that is your other event that you're going to want to make sure you get all your fantasy picks before the 18th. Somewhere around, I think they stop it on the 17th, or can you still make changes the day before the event starts, right?
Yeah, day before the time. Yeah. And again, check on your fantasy sites. Again, Skip Ace is a little different than the one we mentioned earlier, which again I'm blanking on already.
In my bag or my
something like
hold
that.
My bag.
Hold my bag.
Yep. Hold my bag. DG.com. And then let's move on to, we only have really one more segment here. It's the mailbag. This is where we like to highlight something that we found or something that you take in, any type of content that maybe you haven't seen, maybe you have, that you'd like to share with friends. We know we'd like to share it with you. But initially, one of the things we do want to make sure that you know is stay tuned for our Flightline videos. We are working on a library of them before we start to release those out. So that is all in Justin's lap. Justin is a busy man, so we give him leeway as much as possible because he's the tech guy behind all this stuff. So stay tuned, because they're nice and quick, easy for consumption, and simple to watch, very quick. I think you'll like them, and they're aimed towards the beginner and amateur players. So stay tuned for those. Any videos that you want to promote for our viewers or our listeners or anybody?
I'm gonna keep going back to I know it's ridiculous to say this, but the Simon vlogs are amazing. He added music. He had a musical segment in his last couple of videos, because I forget the other. Do you know the other pro that was playing the cello?
It was wasn't it Longquist?
Think so.
I think it was Longquist that was playing the cello. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Having Simon play the guitar, and I don't remember who was playing
on that. Yeah.
But anyway, check out his vlogs if you're not.
In one of those videos that I watched, in one of those videos I watched, because of the delay or the actual cancellation of match play, they did a really cool thing, which I don't think I've seen them do it before. It's called Sevens. Have you ever played that?
I've played a version of that. I've done the knockout thing that Go Throw does at the end of their skins if they have a skins to give up. So I don't know if I've done Sevens. But it was an interesting game.
It was an interesting game. So go check out Simon's vlogs. Another one I do actually want, maybe you made me think about it, is Silas Schultz. because his editing ability is great too. He has some.
Okay.
It's very much more. I don't want to say not disc golf, but it's very well edited on his own. So
Gotcha.
Go check out Silas Schultz YouTube.
I'll shout out 2 smaller channels that are out there. Again, more vlog content. Lucky Lorenzen.
Yeah.
She does kind of more behind the scenes, not just practice round stuff. And then also who she's had on her channel, who also has a YouTube channel, Annika Steen, also does a YouTube channel. And this week's was a vlog review of her things, and she did a little behind the scenes. You actually see her playing Uno with Paul Macbeth and the Lats and another touring pro and things like that. But yeah, it's just, it's still disc golf related, but adjacent. And so I really like that kind of stuff too, is, to consume not just practice rounds, and stuff like that, a little bit different videos and stuff like that, out there.
I like the vlog style things because you get to learn their personality more. You don't just see their ability on the course. You get to connect with them in a different way or appreciate them in a different way. Or maybe it changes your mind. Maybe you don't like them anymore.
Yeah.
You're just like, you know what? Whatever. But the majority of them, it's usually a positive reaction to any of those vlog type videos that I watch as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, definitely good shout out for those guys. All right, guys, we are at the end of the show today. Remember, if you happen to be in the market for a disc golf bag, as Justin says, you can go to Upper Park's website and use code DiscGolfShow to get 15% off your purchase. They have a variety of bag styles and colors. They are a USA-made bag, so go check them out. Again, for all your online shopping needs, disc golf needs, go to discgolfdealsusa.com/discgolfshow. You can get 10% off your order there. I think there are a few little caveats on new releases from MVP Axiom Streamline. I think those might not be discountable just because of how that works. But anything else, you always get the 10% off there via our affiliate link. Always support your local pro shops. Again, this episode was brought to you in part by Final Nine Sports with their 2 locations in Northern California, one in Rockland, one in Orangevale. We really appreciate their support. We've known them for a long time, and we love to do what we can for them as best possible. And then I mess this up every time I say it, but one, subscribe, click that notification bell for future videos, hit the like button. All those things help. It really does. We're still growing, and little by little, but every little bit counts. So thank you very much. And for Justin, Ken, and myself, in disc golf, as in life, aim high and let it slide.